Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today for Advanced Excel Data Visualization Techniques to Enhance Healthcare Analysis. My name is Russell Hendrickson, and I'm the CEO here at Practical Data Solutions. And I'm so pleased to have joining me today two of our team members. One is Scott Everett, who's our Vice President of Healthcare Solutions. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Russell, and really excited about this topic. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
And the other person I have joining us today is Jared Teixeira, who's one of our Excel report analysts.
Yes, thank you, Russell. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with PDS, we focus on healthcare analytics and reporting solutions, primarily in three key areas, both financial, operational, and clinical analytics. And we've got over 25 years delivering best practice visualizations, data warehouses, and really helping organizations be successful with analytics and how to use them for performance improvement.
As our webinar goes today, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them via the Q&A toolbar, and we'll be happy to address those questions either at the end of the webinar or as we go along.
So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the benefits of visualization in healthcare data.
And then I'm going to walk you through the key steps to create 5 chart types in Excel.
Then we'll go through and we'll talk about where it's appropriate to use these different charts and create meaningful dashboards in your organization that communicate well.
And then, of course, we're going to be talking about the use of Excel and how we can build better visualizations to communicate effectively, even gaining efficiency within Excel, as well as some of the other more powerful visualization tools. So let's jump right into today's topic. I love this graphic here on the screen because it kind of represents where healthcare technology's been, and that Excel's really been sort of holding up analytics throughout healthcare. And of course, today we have all this new emerging technology. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those tools. So I don't know that this is so prevalent today, but still we find in healthcare, there's a lot of Excel being used, and probably in part why you came to this webinar is because you're still using Excel in your organization today. Building dashboards, whether we're doing it in Excel or with some of the latest technology, there's a lot of benefits, which is why we need technology. We need a way to communicate effectively. One of the biggest things that, building charts, graphs, and dashboards bring is the ability to identify trends and communicate effectively with the users where we see these performance opportunities. It really goes back to dashboards tell a story, or a picture's worth 1,000 words. And some of the newer technology that organizations are using today is Power BI, very, very popular. And most organizations are pursuing that as a strategy and have already adopted it. So we see a shift moving away from Excel. At the same time, technologies like Tableau and Click that have been around for a while, they've had some success, but organizations are still trying to fit in where's that balance between these more flexible, powerful tools and the ability to deliver results quickly. If we look at a state-of-the-art visualization today, you can see we've got very powerful capabilities. And one of the biggest reasons why people are pursuing technologies like Power BI is that it's literally point and click. It can be interactive. We can slice and dice. We can explore. We can drill. We can highlight outliers and get answers instantly, which is something that brings a little more power than what we can do with Excel.
A lot of organizations, though, Russell, aren't necessarily ready to get to that full visualization piece that you just showed there. It requires a lot of data modeling and costs and budgets to get that in place. And so, in order to do that, a lot of organizations still stand by Excel as part of their report deployment strategy. And there's a reason for that. Excel's good. Excel does the job that it was designed for over 30 years ago. Everybody knows Excel. Everybody has Excel on their computers. And most of these tools that you just demonstrated, Russell, have buttons that take that analysis directly into Excel. And so it's really something that is still a very, very valuable solution today. And of course, just because it's Excel doesn't mean we can't make nice visual dashboards that help communicate very clearly and very well, while also giving a strong visual component.
So let's take a look now. Let's dig right into, we're going to teach you 5 different chart types if you're using Excel that can be really valuable to enhance your dashboards so you can improve how they communicate and really get attention to where you're trying to have better performance and performance measures. So with that, the first chart that we're going to talk about is understanding the heat map chart. And the heat map chart is great to easily sort of follow this 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, that we want to highlight where are the most value to work on. Where, in this case, where do we want to maybe look at claim edits? Where do we have money or opportunities? And we really want to drive the user to the 20% of the work that's going to yield 80% of the results. So really valuable, easy to look at, and can really, when integrated, as we'll see, can be really valuable. With that, Jared, if you would, please walk us through this first example, understanding the heat map chart.
So when we complete our chart, this is what the heat map should look like at the end. We're going to start with a blank sheet, and we're going to create 2 sheets within this file. The first sheet will be our chart sheet. We're going to create a second one. This will be called our data sheet.
So although it's not necessary in this example to separate the chart from the data, we're going to do that because it's really a best practice when we start designing dashboards. And we'll talk about that later in the webinar.
For this example, we're going to use this data. So we will highlight our data. We're going to copy it, and then we will paste it into our data sheet.
And so I want to point out while Jared's doing that the data set we're using is the dollar volume of charges that are sitting in our claim edits or those charge edits. So those charge edits are things that haven't been billed because they're missing diagnoses or missing providers, or they're missing some data that we know if we were to bill it, it's going to get held. So that's the data set we're going to use.
Then we'll go to our chart sheet. We are going to create a formula that will pull all of our data onto our chart sheet, and then we will repeat that for all of the rows and columns that we have. Okay. Then from here, we're going to highlight all of our data, not including the total column. Go to conditional formatting, create a new rule. We're going to make it a 3-color scale. Change all the types to percentiles. The minimum, we're going to change the value to 20. Midpoint will be 50. The maximum is going to be 80. For the color, the minimum will be light gray. Midpoint will be a light blue. The maximum will be a darker blue.
And so obviously you can vary the values based on how much you want to highlight or where you want to highlight the outliers or the good thresholds that you want to show. In this case, by showing, 80th percentile being dark, it clearly highlights where that 20% is that is carrying most of the weight of the claims that we need to focus on.
Then from here, we're going to repeat the last step, but with the total column this time. So same thing, we're going to create a new rule, same exact 3-color scale, percentiles, and the same values, 20, 50, 80, and then the same colors that we used previously.
One of the reasons why Jared's building this again is because if we highlight all the ranges and we include the totals, we've doubled the values, and that would throw our heat map off. So we really want to separate the 20/80 rule in the total column from the rest of the data across our thresholds.
The next step would be to create a total row. And from here, we're going to create a sum formula. And take for the whole column, and we're going to repeat this all the way across. Then from here, we're going to do some formatting. So we're going to take all of our values, change it to currency, remove the decimal points, take the top row, we're going to bold it, take the bottom row, we're going to bold that one too. Then we could highlight our values, center them. Now we're going to insert a column to create a legend. We're going to insert circle. The height of the circle will be 0.5 and the width of the circle will be 0.5. The fill for this circle will be the same light gray that we used earlier, and the outline will be dark gray. Then we're going to take this circle, copy it, and we're going to paste it twice. For the middle circle, we're going to change the fill to the same light blue that we used, and the bottom one will be the same dark blue. Then you could select all three circles. We're going to format them, align to the center, and distribute vertically. And now I have to insert a text box. You can place text in the text box that comes with the shape, but for this, I have to insert a text box to make sure it fits properly. So for the top one, I'm going to do 20th percent. Make it size 10, center it, and then for the text box, I have to remove the fill and the outline and just make it in the center of the circle. Then you could copy the same text box and paste it twice. Put one inside of each circle. Change the middle one to be 50th and the bottom one to be 80th. Then we're going to insert a line going from the top of the circle to the bottom circle. We're going to format it to be the same dark gray as the outline of the circles. And then we're going to send it all the way to the back, so the only thing that shows is in between the circles here. And then you're going to highlight the whole chart and change the fill to the same light gray that we've been using. And then this is what your chart should look like when you're finished.
Thanks, Jared. That was great. So just to reiterate, set up your data sheet and your chart sheet, link your data to the formulas from the data sheet. You're going to use then that conditional formatting that Jared guided us through. We'll add totals and some of the other formatting to just clean it up and make it clean. And you should have a very nice looking heat map chart. But it's not just about building the heat map chart. Now let's take a look at how does that heat map fit into a dashboard. And Scott, I'm going to ask you, guide us through this, please.
Yeah, so this is a dashboard that just contains claim edits. This is a dashboard I don't want to spend a lot of time looking at if I'm a manager. I just want to see where I have problems. And so the heat map really helps me to identify those areas where I am seeing my highest levels of charge edits. What are the particular codes or categories, and what do I need to make sure that I'm addressing or make sure that is still within what my normal expectations would be. And the darker colors are showing me right away that and this meets my expectations, other than a couple of the darker colors in the middle that I need to go and address. I was able to get that information within seconds just by looking at where those darker colors existed.
Yeah, a couple other design techniques that we're using here that may have not have been obvious in the, when we built the heat map, but really where we were trying to go is you'll notice through the dashboard, we've used consistent coloring with the blue and the shades of blue. On the left side of the screen, we've got what I call our sort of three KPIs, that just jump right out at you. But you'll notice we put the heat map into the center of the chart. So it really does highlight where is the money that we want to be chasing. So a great example of using a heat map and then how that heat map can unfold into a broader dashboard. Okay, so the second chart that Jared's going to walk us through is understanding the bullet chart. And bullet charts are great to consolidate metrics and also give us really benchmarks where we want to understand how are we performing against goals, whether it's just a target or upper and lower limits. What's neat about the bullet chart is the bullet chart is really three bars clustered together where you have to set the overlap and the gap. And so with that, Jared, now walk us through how to create the bullet chart.
So we're going to highlight our data. We're going to go to charts, we're going to go column, and then we're going to find the clustered column chart. And it's going to be the first example. Then we're going to cut this one and move it over to our chart sheet. Okay, then we're going to go to format and we're going to go to the 99214, format the selection. We're going to make sure this one is on the secondary axis. The series overlap should be 100 and the gap width should be 200. And then the fill, we're going to change the fill to red, and we want the transparency to be 50. Then we're going to format again. We're going to click on the upper control. We're going to format it. Series overlap should be 100. Gap width for this one should be 50. Then we're going to fill. The fill is going to be light blue, and transparency will be 50.
So now that you can see between the way Jared set the overlap and the gap, you can now start to see the bullet chart taking shape.
Then we're going to format the lower control. Series overlap should be 100. Gap width should be 50. This color is going to be a darker blue, and transparency will be 50. And then from here, we're just going to format our chart to make it communicate effectively. And then this is what it should look like after all the formatting.
Thanks, Jared. That was great. So just to summarize, to create the bullet chart, we're going to, again, set up our data sheet and our chart sheet. We're going to highlight the data from the chart, and then we're going to use that clustered column chart. Then we're going to format our data series, set the widths, and set the main plot area of whatever it is that we're measuring. In this case, our example, we use those 99214s. And then, of course, we're going to finalize the chart, format the axis, remove the decimals, and just kind of clean things up so we can understand that we're looking at the 99214 codes with both an upper range and a lower range, which is really useful when we're benchmarking.
Yeah, and this chart in particular, Russell, I like to look at because it's a very good way to compare to benchmarks. It's a very good way to compare to internal targets, maybe even budgets. And as you can see here with revenue integrity, we're looking at it with coding status, but we could look at it with denials. We could look at it with charges. We could look at it with RVUs. We could look at it with AR. It's a good way to say this is the target, this is where we want to be. And interestingly enough, we just used a chart similar to this with a client that we were working with. We were able to make the bullet chart actually conditional, where the actual performance was red, yellow, green based upon how well they were performing. And so we'll talk about how you can do that probably in a subsequent webinar. But this is really a good way that you can incorporate, especially in the areas of revenue integrity and looking at these particular metrics that really drive the financial performance of our organization.
Yeah, a couple things that I like about this chart in place with the dashboard is you can see, again, those upper lower control limits. On the top right corner, though, we have the stoplight. So everything's kind of very red green. Are we performing the way we want to be, or are we not? On the left side of the screen, again, we can see those red green trend indicators. So a nice uniform design here, the bullet chart really augmenting how we're doing with coding in relation to our other key revenue integrity metrics, which is great. And Scott, just as you mentioned, I love these bullet charts. This one may not be so obvious that we're using a bullet chart over here on the right side of the screen, but in this case, looking at, escalated care and our hospital readmission rates from surgeries, and then you'll see sort of half of a bullet chart there where we just have the benchmark. Are we below target or above target? So again, it makes it easy to really just jump out how are we performing against benchmark without necessarily just using what you see to the left of that chart, which is that straight target line. So just another way to communicate, but really powerful. With that, let's jump in then and go through our third example. Jared, if you would walk us through understanding the XY chart. Now, the XY chart is kind of fun in my mind because it's really what we're going to do is we're going to quadrant our performance into a couple different areas. In this case, we have upper left quadrant, lower right quadrant, and it makes it easy then to see where or how certain people are performing. In this case, our pairs are performing against a benchmark, but it gives us a lot more information than we might see in the bullet chart. So with that, Jared, why don't you walk us through the steps to building out the XY chart?
So this is what the XY chart should look like when you're finished. We're going to start with our sheet. We have our data highlighted in our light green, and then we have our calculations for our benchmark line in this light blue that I will explain as we go further.
And so what we're working with here is we're going to compare the denial rate of our largest payers against their RVU conversion factor, which is the reimbursement rate that we're getting paid. And then we're also going to use the calculations box down below to benchmark against Medicare so we can understand how the payers are performing, denials higher or lower than Medicare, and how is our reimbursement compared to Medicare reimbursement.
So we're going to highlight our data. We're going to insert, go over to charts, and we're going to go X, Y, and we're going to click on the second one, so that way we can see the X and Y values, and click OK. Okay, then we can click on the points. We're going to add data labels, and then we're going to format the data labels, and then we're going to change it. Instead of showing the Y value, we're going to do value from cells, and we're going to highlight the payer names. And then we could get rid of the Y values so that only the pair names are showing here. Okay, then we could go to the points. We're going to format them. We could change the size to 10. Okay, and you can do vary colors by point, but for this example, since we're adding lines in this chart, we won't be able to do this, so we have to do the colors individually. Now for the calculations, we're going to start with our horizontal line. The X value will start from 0, and it's going to go to 0.25. Then for the Y value, we're going to do a formula that's going to pull the Medicare RVU conversion factor. We'll do the same thing here. Okay, then we do our vertical line. So for the X values, we're going to do a similar formula. It's going to pull the Medicare denial rate. Then for our vertical line, we're going to do a similar formula that pulls the Medicare denial rate. And we're going to do it twice. Then for our Y values, we're going to go 40 to 58. Then we can click on our chart, select data. Then we're going to add two new series. One's going to be our horizontal line, one's going to be our vertical line. So the first one, we'll do horizontal line. The X values, we're just going to highlight the X values that we put in. Then we're going to highlight the Y values. Hit OK. Then we do the same thing, but with the vertical line. Highlight the X values. Highlight the Y values. Hit OK. Okay. Then from here, we have to change the chart type, make it a combo chart. So that way our lines are showing up as lines. So our view conversion factor will be a scatter, and the horizontal and vertical line we have to change to the scatter with straight lines. And then we want to make sure that the secondary axis box is not checked for any of these. We can hit OK. Then we have to format our axis. So for this one, we're going to start the minimum at 46, and the maximum will be 53. And then we have format the other one, and we're going to do 0 to 0.2. So from here, we have a couple things left to do. We're going to change the color of our pairs. We're going to change the color of the benchmark lines. We're going to format our axis, add labels, and a title. Then after those final steps, this is what the XY chart should look like.
And so what's really neat about this is we've really created this XY chart that then segregates and creates quadrants for the performance against Medicare. In the upper right quarter, we have our top performing payers, but they also have the highest denial rates. In the bottom right corner, we have the lower performing reimbursed payers with very high denial rates as well. So those two pairs in the bottom right corner are going to be our worst pairs. In the upper left quadrant, we can see our best pairs that have the lowest denial rates but the highest RVU conversion factor. And then, of course, we don't have any in our bottom left quadrant. So really a great way to segregate and start to look at how are our payers performing benchmarking against Medicare. Jared, that was great. So just to summarize, again, we're going to have our various sheets for how we're going to build out our dashboard. We're going to highlight the data on the data sheet, and then we're going to insert that XY scatter chart. We'll add our benchmark lines. In this case, we're benchmarking against Medicare, so we're carrying those lines across the chart, which helps divide things into quadrants. Of course, then we have to format our two different axes. In this case, the y-axis and the x-axis, which is getting us both the reimbursement rate as well as our denial rate. And then ultimately, we're going to just finalize the chart, add the color, and make it easy to communicate. What I love about this chart, though, is when you put it in some context. In this case, Scott, we're looking at payer performance. Guide us through how does this all fit together?
Yeah, this is a great one when I'm looking at benchmarking payers against each other, or I could be benchmarking really any group of providers, payers, anything like that to determine performance on a couple of different metrics. And so in this case, we're looking at contract conversion factor, where we're looking at payment per work RVU, also looking at our denial rates. And so we can see there are organizations or payers that pay well, but they have a very high denial rate. And that's one that we probably need to address because that denial rate is actually bringing down our real reimbursement. On the other side of things, we probably have other payers who are low denial rate, but maybe don't reimburse as well. And these are ones where, again, we have to factor in the cost of doing business with them when are working in our negotiations to say these people are easier to work with. And so perhaps the lower reimbursement in our contracts is something that's a little bit acceptable in those cases.
So the next chart that we're going to talk about is the speedometer chart, which is one of my favorites, actually. Really good at focusing in if we have a key metric. What are we, so really trying to emphasize, are we on target with a particular metric that we can't lose sight of? In this case, the speedometer chart that Jared's going to walk us through is built on our clean claim rate. So with that, Jared, if you would walk us through how to build out the speedometer chart.
Yeah, so this is what your chart should look like when you're finished. The unique thing about this chart is that it's actually a whole circle that goes all the way around, and the bottom half of this chart is actually hidden, so you only see the top half. So in our data sheet, we only have one metric for this. It's our clean claim rate. Okay, and this will actually end up being a percentage. Then for our calcs, we're going to do our calcs on the data sheet, just like the last chart. So for the first part, we're going to do our performance labels, and this is going to be the red, yellow, and the light green, dark green that you saw on the finished chart. So for our values for poor, we're going to set it to 60. For weak, we're going to set it to 20. Good is going to be 10. Excellent is going to be 10. And for total, we're going to set this to 100. And actually for this total value here, this is going to be the bottom half of the chart that's hidden.
So what Jared did, and the reason why we're saying it at 60, 20, 10, and 10 is those are really our thresholds. So we're really poor performance is at 60% or below. Weak is from 60 to 80. Good is from 80 to 90. And excellent is from 90 to 100. So that those values, obviously, if you want to change the speedometer or the ranges, you would change those values.
So now we're going to do the other set of calculations, and this will be for our needle. So for a needle location, we're going to do a formula that's going to take our clean claim rate, and we're going to times it by 180. Then the needle size will just be the size of the needle. You can set this to any value, but for this chart, we're going to set it to 3. The remainder will be another formula. We're going to do equals 360 minus the sum of these two values. Okay, and the label is just going to be a formula to create our label for the chart.
So Jared, could you just explain, because I'm a little puzzled. I see the needle location is set to 166.32. That was a calculation on the claim rate. I see the needle size is 3. How do you come up with the remainder, and what exactly is that?
So for the remainder, we take 360, which is the whole circle, and then we're going to minus the needle location, which is setting where the needle is located on the chart, and then the size of the needle. So we take the 166, we add 3 to it, and then we minus that from 360, and that gives us the remainder of the circle.
Okay, so really that remainder is the part of the circle that isn't going to be shown against the needle, right? Basically, it's half of the chart that's going to be hidden.
Correct.
Okay, and you'll see that just in just a second when Jared builds out the chart.
So then to get the chart, we're going to highlight our performance label section. We're going to go to Insert, Charts, and we're going to insert a donut chart. And then from here, we're just going to set our colors so we can see what the sections are. So this purple section, we just change to no fill. This is our poor section, so we can set this to red. This is our weak section. We're going to set this to yellow. Good, it's going to have a light green. And excellent will have a dark green.
So Jared, for those of you who are watching this video, the first time you did this, I didn't understand that we have to rotate the chart. It would be great if you could rotate the chart right now as you're building it, but I understand that because we're going to, again, build another combo chart, the rotation has to be done after.
Yes, so we could rotate the chart now, but once we add the second one and we combine them, it's going to set it back anyway, so we're going to do it after. Okay, then we're going to click the chart. We're going to select the data. We're going to add a new series, and this series will be our calculations for the needle. And we're going to highlight these 3 cells, the location, needle size, and remainder. Hit OK. And from here, you can see we have 2 charts, one being our performance labels and the one on the outside being our needle. So the 2 larger sections, we can set this to no fill. And the tiny section, this will end up being our needle, so we can set the fill to black. Okay, then we're going to take our chart, change the chart type. We're going to go to combo. Our values will be a donut chart, and our calculations will be a pie chart. Then we'll format the chart, change the angle of the first slice to 270. And then we'll do the same for the values. Change it to 270. And then we want to change the donut hole size. We're going to change that to 75. Then from here, we're going to format our chart again. So we could go to our calculations format. and then we're gonna remove the border. Then we'll do the same thing for our values, the format, and remove the border. And we could also remove the legend at this point. Then we're gonna insert a text box. And then the text box will equal our label. Okay, and then we could remove the outline. We also want to center the text. And from here, we're going to finish up formatting and we're going to add a legend. And after that, this is what your chart should look like when you're finished.
So Jared, could you show us, I know when we talked about this, you've hard coded that performance, which I kind of like that poor, weak, good, excellent. It's very clear how we're performing, but I know you had another variation when we were preparing for the webinar here that used gradients. Could you show us an example of that and just explain how you got that one to work?
Yeah, so this is just another set of the same chart, but instead of setting the values, we set the fill to a gradient. So we have red and it moves on to almost an orange, yellow, and then into our dark green.
So this might be good where your performance is less clear cut. I kind of like in the clean claim charge rate, we've got very set performance goals. But if you have something that's a little smoother, maybe it's patient satisfaction where, it's not quite so clear cut that 90 is an 89 or so different. You might want to use gradients instead. Just another example of how the speedometer chart can be adapted. So that's great. Thanks, Jared. So just to summarize for everyone, again, we're going to have our data sheets, our calc sheets, and our chart sheets. And we're going to then build the initial chart, which is really a donut chart that gives us our performance levels. Then we're going to add the pointer, which actually happens to be a second chart laid right on top of the first chart. And then really adjust colors, angles, and the elements. And of course, just communicate effectively.
Yeah, one of the things I like about this chart, Russell, is it just looks cool. It's one, but it's also one that, again, I know immediately where our performance is. Are we good? Are we struggling? Is it something that needs to be addressed immediately? I can look at the speedometer and say, I'm meeting target, I'm not meeting target, and then dig in to try to understand why and what needs to be done to fix it. In this case, we're looking at clean claim rates within our denials. And I can tell right away that for the month we did really well. Year to date, we're still struggling a little bit. So I probably need to go back and look at some of these prior months to understand where we were maybe a little bit higher and go in and figure out who's denying, what are they denying, and why are they denying.
Yeah, and again, in the context of building out a dashboard to communicate, we've got sort of our three key charts right in the middle of this dashboard. You can't miss your performance with the speedometer chart. At the same time, we've got a lot of good supporting metrics that even show trends around all of those key metrics related to denials and denial resolution. So really, really powerful chart and kind of a fun one to build. Here's another example of using the speedometer chart. In this case, instead of just are we on or off, really how is our performance with patient arrivals versus no shows or cancellations. And so we're using both the speedometer chart in the center of the screen as well as that above target, below target, red, green. So just a nice effect, but another example where your speedometer chart, again, making it easy to understand where are we performing versus where we want to be performing. All right, let's talk about the fifth chart we're going to cover today, which is understanding the dynamic bar chart. And this is absolutely one of my favorites, both in how it's built, but the fact that we can be flexible in the design. And what we're really trying to do here in the dynamic bar chart is great for benchmarking and communicating performance. How far off of target are we? So making it very easy for users to see, are we on target, are we off target, but really great for benchmarking performance and communicating visually, where are we where we want to be, and if we're not, where do we need to improve? So with that, if you would, Jared, please walk us through this fifth dynamic bar chart.
Yeah, so this is what your chart should look like when you're done. We already have our data into our data sheet, but this time we're going to make our calculations on the data sheet and then we'll move them to our calc sheet later. So the first calculation we're going to do is difference from target. So we're going to make a formula that gives us a difference between the score and our target of 0.8. So we're going to do a if formula that says if this is greater than the target, if it's true, you're going to do the score minus the target. And if it's false, you're going to do the same thing, the score minus the target. And you're going to bring it all the way down. Then for chart negative, we're going to make a formula that only pulls up the negative values. So it's going to be another if formula. So if the difference from the target is less than 0, it's going to show the difference. If not, it's going to show nothing. And we're going to bring that all the way down. Chart positive is going to be a similar formula, but it's going to pull only the positive values. So again, another if formula. So if the difference is greater than 0, it's going to show that number. If not, it's going to show nothing. And we're going to bring that all the way down.
And so what Jared's done here is he's set it up so that the left side of the chart is going to come from our negative values and the right side of our chart is going to come from our positive values. So really just organizing our calc sheet so we can now start to map out and chart out exactly how we want it to display.
So now we're going to enter our chart. So we're going to highlight the chart negative and chart positive columns. Go to Insert, Charts, All Charts, go to Bar, and we're going to find the clustered bar, and we're going to click on the second option.
Now, one of the things I'd like to point out here, if you look at the way we've charted it, is you can see because we've got 80% on the left side, right? Some of those values go way far over, and that's not really going to work in the chart we're trying to build. It's too much variation. So how are we going to address that, Jared?
So we're going to go into our formula for the chart negative column, and when it's pulling this D3, the difference in target value, we're going to divide that number by 4. And we're going to bring that all the way down.
And so the reason why we're dividing by 4 is because on the right side of the chart positive, that's the 80 to 100%. So we have a 20% variable there. So to make the left side, which is at 80% variable, equal 20%, we have to divide by 4. 80 divided by 20 gets us a divide by 4 to make those bar chart values equal on the left or the right.
So then from here, we could cut our chart, paste it into a chart sheet, and then you could take your calculations and put them on the calc sheet. Okay, the next step is we're going to take our axis, format the axis. We're going to check the boxes as categories in reverse order so that 1 is at the top. Then we're going to go to the line. We're going to make it a solid line. We're going to make it black. Then we're going to go to text options and turn the text to no fill so that the text disappears. Then from here, we can delete the axis, delete the grid lines, the legend, and the title. So the only thing is left is just the bars. Okay, then we're going to click on our bars. We're going to format them. Series overlap is going to go to 100, and our gap width is going to go to 0. Okay, so then for these bars, we're going to color them, but this time we're going to use a gradient fill. So for the first color, we're going to do a dark blue. Okay, and then we're going to click on the second one, change the color, and this one's going to be a light blue.
And so what Jared just did there was just trying to give a little more contrast to the where we're close to 80% and where we're closer to 100%. So the color just gets a little bit darker, which will give a nice visual effect.
And then you could repeat the same gradient fill with the chart negative side.
And as you can see, we want the left side values where we're not hitting the target. We don't necessarily want to show them in blues. We're going to use yellow, versus say red, which might be considered too strong. People often associate red with bad. So we're going to use yellow just to say there's room for improvement here.
Okay, and then from here, we're going to click on we're going to format the plot area, right click, we're going to remove the fill, remove the outline, and then format the chart area. Remove the fill, remove the outline, remove the outline, so you just have the bars. Next step is we're going to create a formula that's going to pull the patient satisfaction physician column. We're going to pull that whole column over. And we're going to do another formula, and this one's going to pull over the score column. Okay, and then we're going to replace score. We're going to replace this to say response. And then in the column next to it, we're going to put 80%, and this is the column where we're going to put our chart. And then we're just going to do some final formatting to the chart. And then after the final formatting, this is what your chart should look like.
So just to summarize, we're going to prepare the data. We're going to set where our benchmark is going to be. In this case, we used 80% threshold for good performance and below 80% for not so good performance. We're going to then insert that stacked bar chart using both positive and negative columns. We're going to then format the chart axes, remove all the unwanted items from the chart, and then integrate that back in with the data and just align everything so it's clear and easy to communicate. Now, what I love about this chart, and Scott, we've talked about this in many of our different webinars, but again, walk us through why is this so powerful?
Yeah, so in this example right here, we're showing patient satisfaction or patient experience scores. And this is a level where we don't want to be at 50%. 50% is failing in this case. We've set an internal target at 80% on these patient experience scores. And we want to know where the particular areas, whether it's with a provider or whether it's with the care team. And we want to be able to easily see what are the individual questions that we have on these patient experience surveys where we're not meeting expectations, and we need to be able to go in and address those directly. And so looking at these ways, these tell me right away as a manager, as an executive, here's where we're struggling, here's what needs to be addressed, here's where we're close, and here's where we're performing well.
Yeah, just jumps right out. I mean, if you look at the physician's performance, you skim down, you can see this physician's not doing a great job with making patients, feel followed up with care. And certainly in terms of this practice or this clinic, clearly, again, you can see, Patients are complaining or unhappy with ease of getting appointments and even how courteous the staff is when they come in. So that might also point to some operational improvements. What's so much fun about this dashboard, though, and really goes to building dashboards and dashboard design, which is what we're going to talk about a little further here, is you can go further with Excel and move to the next level by simply overlaying graphics. But I want you to notice our chart type is exactly the same. We're using the same measures on data. So with more visualization, by bringing in some graphics and just by adding some more color, we can really even make that dashboard pop a little more if we're trying to get people to look at it. So kind of a lot of fun with what you can do with this chart. And I think one of the more powerful charts that we've shared today.
We've shown you today 5 different visualization techniques and really helping to understand that you don't have to have the same old spreadsheet look that goes through. Excel can give you powerful visualizations with a clean and modern look to them by simply placement of chart types and formatting that you've seen before.
So, what are some of the challenges with Excel? We talked about some of the challenges with visualization techniques. But some of the challenges with Excel is the fact that, there's a lack of collaboration when you're building something. It's not web-based. Oftentimes you have very limited drill down. Some of the other big complaints are that the tools, Excel doesn't update automatically, can be very manual at times. And so then that means you may have mistakes in your dashboards. And of course, just time consuming to build or rebuild, right? But a couple of things that I do want to talk to is we do have a tool here called PDS Dash. If you're heavy Excel users and you're relying heavily on Excel, you might want to learn more about our toolset PDS Dash. And I love to say PDS Dash helps us control what we here at PDS call that Excel monster. Okay, so let me walk you through this. And I love these sort of simple visualizations. And I apologize if it's a little bit too cutesy, but it's kind of fun. And what I call the Excel monster is you start building something in Excel and it's effective. You built a dashboard, you start communicating with leadership or with others, and then they come back and they go, yeah, but I want more. Give me more. I need more pages. I need more charts. I need more graphs, right? And so what happens is that little nice looking dashboard evolves and it evolves and people keep putting more demands on it. And over time, you suddenly have this sort of big Excel project that's got all these different data sheets and all these different data sources. And it's very hard to keep it in line and keep it managed, And so one of the ways that we can do that, and as I mentioned, is we have this tool set PDS Dash. And what PDS Dash really does is it's almost like a superhero in that it can automate the refresh of data. It can help better standardize design. It can burst dashboards. So when you build something, you can then create one dashboard, but it'll build it out for 50 physicians or 20 different departments. It can even build in security and simplify when you're distributing data. So it's much more scalable across organizations. And so, this is one of our answers is to sort of help keep Excel in control. If your Excel is hard to manage, you might want to learn more about our PDS Dash tool. Just to give you another illustration, Dash really makes it easy to integrate different types of data coming in and then blend them to build some of the visual dashboards that you see here. And Scott, if you would, we've shown you some examples both in how to build chart types, but of our dashboards within. But would you guide us through what are some of the design techniques that we would recommend?
Yeah, so one of the things we really recommend when you're designing dashboards is that you think ahead and think to what you would like to have if you had one of these web-based solutions. Because a lot of times we're looking at integrating these and moving them and migrating them into that web-based solution that you have once you've brought it up in your organization. Look for ideas from other places. Say, I like this chart, I like this graph, I like this particular heat map in certain cases, and build it in a way. Use complementary colors. This is one thing where we've really started coming about to make the charts look nice by making the dashboard integrated with the use of color, white space, margins, things like that. And then really what you're looking for with a visual dashboard is an executive, a provider, a manager can look at it and within seconds they can come to conclusions of, are we meeting target? Are we not meeting target? Where are our problem areas and what needs to be addressed immediately?
And just to go a little further, some of what you've seen in today's webinar, but one of the ways that we help our clients, whether it's with Excel or with the visualization tools, is we do have a fairly extensive dashboard library that is available to our clients. And what you've seen in today's webinar is just some of the examples of things that are contained within the library to make it easier to both get ideas, design effectively, and communicate whatever the types of data is that you're trying to communicate. So PDS can help you whether it's building an enterprise data warehouse, trying to blend all your data together, or be more successful with some of the newer technologies like Power BI or Tableau. We have the skills and the expertise to make you successful with technology. Whether you're looking for just building better dashboards through Excel, as we've explored throughout today's webinar, or having true slice and dice, enterprise analytics where you can build visualizations, explore data through cubes, or even just do very focused patient-driven operational type reporting. We certainly encourage you to explore and learn more about PDS.
You can find more information about us at our website, pds-online.com, and we would love to hear from you if you have any questions or anything else that you'd like to see from us.
And so this concludes today's webinar. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.